Hello and welcome to TMRN, the Time Monk Radio Network. I'm Jules and today is Monday, the 6th of February 2012. Today, for our first ever interview on our new site, http://timemonkradio.com, we have Englishman, prolific author, researcher and public speaker David Icke. David's research has led him into many topic areas, both in our five senses world of reality and beyond. David was the second researcher I encountered that set me on the path of truth-seeking, the first being Dolores Cannon. David's current book is Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, Lion Sleeps No More, and he will have a new book out shortly called Remember Who You Are. Hi, David. Welcome to a roundtable discussion on the Time Monk Radio Network.
Thanks, Jules. Pleasure. First time for me.
Thanks. The pleasure's all ours. The TMRN administrator and executive producer of the show is Fox, and today he will be doing the recording and technical support of the show. Several members of the forum were kind enough to join us tonight. They include members Chipperdog, Five Cook, Green Meadow, Lenny, Uranus Rising, and special roundtable guest and creator of the webbots, Cliff High. For listeners, this interview will assume you have a good understanding of David's work, including his theories on the elite, their agenda, the powers behind the elite, and how they control society, the vibrational and frequency-based nature of reality, and much more. All these areas are covered by David in his books and through numerous radio and TV interviews. David's books can be purchased at davidicke.com, while his interviews can be found on YouTube or by using any internet search engine. Let's use the internet to our advantage while it is still available and free and uncensored. David, we know that you have explored many of the esoteric details on how we have gotten to where we are. For this interview, we would like to focus on where we are going. We are looking for information that is actionable and will help people adapt to the coming changes. Some of the adaptation may be reworking how we do things, and some of the adaptation may be internal by changing our thinking. We would like to work from the big picture down into the details that you think are most important. Are you ready for the discussion, sir?
Go ahead, Jules.
Thank you. Our first question is from Chipperdog in regards to awakening and the big picture.
David, I'm glad that you're here with us today. And the
Thanks,
question
Chipper.
that I would like to ask, it seems that we're teetering at the edge of an evolutionary shift for humanity and the planet, with many new incoming energies arriving. Whether we consider the Mayan prophecies of a new race of the human species, Homo luminous humanity, or look at our past history of humanity's evolutionary upgrades, these shifts require a destructive phase before a creative one can take place. Evolutionary shifts include shocking collapse, suffering, and maybe dark nights of the soul strewn with ashes. This upgrade seems a spiritual one, a movement away from materialism and isolationism. You have said before that the elite, though they may be able to see a larger picture of reality than we can, they are still just as trapped in an illusion, much like we are. Hence, do you think the ex-elite, TPTB, psychopaths serve a spiritual purpose? That by things getting so bad, to a depth and breadth of suffering so unbearable that they are providing the impetus for humanity's awakening and upgrade, and our courage to get off our knees to become sovereign individuals within self-organizing collectives? Do we have to suffer to become enlightened?
Well, that's a very interesting question. And if I started talking about all elements of it, then I don't think there'd be another question while I'm here. It's a very, very big area. No, I don't think we have to suffer. You see, for what it's worth, I have a view that we are experiencing a fake reality, a false reality. Thus, a fake version of how this life, this what you call evolution experience should be. Thus, I would suggest that the suffering is part of that illusion which has systematically suppressed our ability to expand our consciousness to that level of perception where suffering's not necessary. See, if you expand your consciousness and you access a vastly greater area of knowledge, of understanding, of love, of wisdom, of intuitive knowing, then you clearly are going to live your life and interact with other expressions of the infinite in a very different way to if you are systematically manipulated into basically filtering everything through the five senses, which sees everything as apart from everything else and absolutely desperately sees everything in terms of limitation. It sees everything, let me get rid of this phone. There you go. It sees everything in terms of limitation and thus scarcity. Once you see things in terms of scarcity, you have to see then, or you overwhelmingly see, I have to grab more of that scarcity than someone else,
right? And
I have to have, so you do not have, and all these perceptions of dog eat dog and fighting and competing with each other comes from your perception of reality and your perception of your situation. And of course, the religions, which I say have been created to control us, I see religion as the greatest form of mind control ever invented, and certainly perception suppression.
Amen to that.
They have underpinned this salvation through friggin' suffering. It's not, it's an illusion. It's a trap. It's to let us accept our suffering. What do they say all the time? Suffer now, whether it's economic austerity now, then it'll be better in the future. Suffer now, and it will be better in the future. But we're always suffering in the flipping now, and when the future comes, we suffer in another flipping now. And therefore, I say that all this idea that we must suffer to somehow progress is a nonsense and a fundamental part of the entrapment. And I see this transformation, which I've been talking about for over 20 years now. I have no problem, absolutely, the last person in the world, with the fact that there is an energetic, i.e. information, consciousness change going on. And those who are more open in terms of their mind are going to be touched by it first. They have been. But now I'm seeing people who are at one point, much more concrete-minded, much more closed-minded, who are now being touched by it. And they're opening to concepts about reality, self, and world events that they never would. They would have dismissed them by reflex action before. So I have no problem with the fact that this is happening. But as I explain in this new book, Remember Who You Are, people will disagree with me on that. Say, well, it's just a view. But I say that we are not seeing a kind of natural point of expansion of consciousness, in the sense that, now we're going through this new cycle and we have expanded consciousness. I don't see it like that. I see what's happening as a multi-dimensional challenge to the hijack, to the hack, which is bringing about this vibrational, energetic information change that is starting to challenge the control system of limitation and suppression and little me and fake self-identities and all the rest of it. And that's what's actually happening. And so when you are running the control system, and if I knew 22 years ago that this was coming, and other people knew that this vibrational change was coming, then sure as heck the control system knew. And I would suggest that what we're seeing now is not a coincidence, in the sense of quite demonstrably. I went all around the world last year. It's happening everywhere, in affecting all different sections of society, ages, income brackets, the lot. This awakening is real.
Yes.
And at the same time this is happening, Chipper, we are seeing the control system throwing everything at us in terms of suppression, surveillance, destabilizing us mentally, emotionally, and what we call physically through food additives and radiation and all the other stuff. That's happening at the same time as this awakening. I would suggest that's no coincidence. This is the control system seeking to hold on to its power at a time when that power is being fundamentally challenged by the awakening awareness of increasingly vast numbers of humanity. So in that in this cusp that we're in now, where what I call the irresistible force, the awakening, is coming face to face with what thinks it's the immovable object but isn't, the control system. It's a time of tremendous upheaval, challenge, change, events, pleasant and not so pleasant. And I would just say that that's what's happening now. But in the bigger picture of what you talk about, Chipper, in terms of do we have to go through this to awaken? Well, in the end, every single thing that happens to us, every single thing that we perceive is an experience. And we have the opportunity with each experience to learn and change our perception from the information the experience gives us. And as one great example, so many people are turning their minds to another possible explanation for the world by the fact that they are suffering the impact now of the control system agenda, which, as I said years ago, there's going to come a point when something that's hidden and covert under the surface has to break the surface where it can be seen because it wants to change society in the image of its agenda. Thus, at some point, it's going to be so increasingly blatantly obvious that we are actually going to see it. It's going to break the surface. Clearly, we all know that's happened. And that experience of the consequences of what's happening in the world and seeing increasingly more blatantly that there is a cabal that's controlling things like the banking system en masse, etc. Right. That experience collectively is having an effect on getting people to reassess how they thought the world was. So, you know, in the end, all these things are true and all these things are not true. It's the paradox. It's, you know, something you look at it something from this angle and it looks a certain way, and it does. But yes, you look at it from another angle and it looks a different way, and neither is wrong. It's just a different way of looking at the same thing.
All relative seeings.
Yeah.
That question is from Uranus rising, and I agree that the overlay has been placed and strengthened every chance it gets by that mindset that would control. But I think the resonance of each person as they come awake intensifies tremendously what they're afraid of.
Well, you know, Chipper, in the end, it's all energetic.
Yes.
Because we see a so-called physical world, but it's a holographic decoded projection of waveform information, in my view. So in the end, everything comes down to energy. Energy is consciousness. And thus, our state of consciousness impacts upon our vibratory state, and collectively we impact upon the vibratory state of the energy sea that we live in. And it's very, very clear, because I've done so much research and talked to so many people about the methods and rituals and if you like, ambitions of Satanism, which is vast around the world. I mean, we call it Satanism today, but it's been going on all the way through the generations. It's never gone away. It's just gone underground. And one of the key focuses of it is to do rituals at certain key points on the Earth's energy grid where there's major vortex points and meridian lines crossing. Because when they do their rituals repetitively in certain areas over and over again, certain points, that energy of those grotesque rituals and the way they manipulate energy is suppressing the vibrational frequency of the energy sea in which we live our lives. And, you know, if you want to affect all the fish at the same time, what do? You affect the sea. And this is what they're targeting. Now, this vibrational change that I call truth vibrations, because it's bringing, you know, an awakening to people, and it's also bringing things to the surface collectively. This is why all this stuff about the conspiracy is now coming to the surface now and not 50 years ago or 40 years ago. Every time someone awakens, that awakening shifts their energy field into another vibrational state. They start broadcasting on a different frequency. And the more people that do this, the more people that tune into this vibrational change and become walking, talking expressors of it, the more they are impacting, and the more that do it, the more collectively we're impacting upon the energy sea, and thus breaking up this density, this information field that they put in through these rituals of control, of suppression, of limitation. Because, I see the reality that we are experiencing as like a cosmic internet. We are taking from it, we are receiving information, but like the internet, we're also posting information. It's an interactive reality. And thus, when we change, and the more we collectively change, the more the collective experience must change. And we're in this cusp now, this point of where one is coming in to challenge the other, and it's always going to be a time of upheaval, because for something to come in, what is here holding that ground, if you like, has to go. And so we're in this transitional period, and that's why life is as it is at the moment. But there's so many good things happening. I look at my website headlines every day, and I see all the things that the control system wants to do and how it's moving on. But there's so many really good things going on as well, where just simple things like someone stops you in the street. I tell you, it was a really interesting story. I went to the supermarket over the Christmas kind of period in England, and it was dark. And I parked my car in the car park right away from the supermarket. So it was dark. It was in the shadows. And I had some recycling stuff. So I walked across the road to put the recycling stuff. And as I was walking away, I just saw this man. I could only see his shadow. And he was standing there just staring at me and watching me walk across the road. I thought, oh, that's interesting. Anyway, did the stuff and then turned around, walked back. He's still looking at me. And I walked towards my car, and then he started walking towards me, and he came closer, and I saw who it was. This was a waiter in a local restaurant that I've known off and on, not very often, but many times over the years, for about 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And this man, from my experience of talking to him before, was really one of the most, let's say not one of the most open-minded people you'll ever meet. And he came over to me it was like a little boy. And he said, I was just thinking about you today, and I wanted to meet you and talk to you. And you're here. I said, yeah, okay. How are you doing, mate? What restaurant are you at and all that stuff? He said, something's happened, David. He said, I'm not the same person anymore. I'm thinking strange things like everything's the same energy field. And it's like, and I'm going, you? Crikey. So when you see little things like that, that there is a change going on, and it's going to be fantastic. But, there's some challenges on the way, to say the least.
Right. Well, thank you so much for that, David. That was a very good answer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chipper. I'll pass it over to Green Meadow.
Hi, David.
You sound nice. I like Green Meadows. One of my favorite places.
So my question is, it is good to identify what is wrong with the world, but it's also useful to have goals of what we are aiming for. What changes do you think would be beneficial and have positive impact on our health and well-being? And how do you envision the future?
Well, we love each other. That's the bottom line. Because, there's two ways of meeting a situation that we'd like to change. One is to find a solution to it. Well, we're drowning in those. And solutions are not usually the answer to anything. There's the other way, and that's removing the cause of the problem. And the cause of the problem is that we've allowed ourselves to be divided and ruled on so many levels. And, when people complain about wars, that's good. But if you got wars in your own life, in your individual situations, then you're just a microcosm of the macrocosm you say you don't want to have. And it's a challenge because the way society is structured and as I go into the new book in some detail, the way we're manipulated emotionally, we are battling against a force which wants us to constantly produce low vibrational emotion around the emotion or the response of fear, of guilt, of frustration, of anger, of conflict, all these things, because those behind the human level of this feed off that energy. That's why they've structured society to produce it. So these forces, well, we need to be kind to ourselves and realize that we are in a situation where the game is rigged to make us do all the things that we would consider not the things to do. And so it's so important that we realize that and don't get on our own backs when we're not bloody perfect in our perception of perfection. But at the same time, we also need to realize that the system is structured to make us respond in all these reactive emotional ways to keep us individually and collectively under control. And to, when we react in that kind of way, to start realizing in the point of the reaction, I'm going there again. And you then start to catch yourself reacting in the way that the control system is poking you in the chest to react. And it's a challenge, but you can do it. I mean, there's this old line, count to 10 or count to 20. Count to as many numbers as it takes for you to let that initial low vibrational emotional reaction disperse and let the thinking mind come in. And then we stop doing many of the reactive things that we are manipulated to do, and to realize that other people are in the same situation. They are reacting according to what I would call program, and they're caught in the program as well. And if we are kind to ourselves when we're caught in the program, and then but aware that we are, thus we can start to change the way we react, and to realize other people are. We have compassion for ourselves in the sense of we know we're caught in a game that is a real challenge, because all the game is absolutely rigged to get us to respond to life in a certain way, but the other people responding to us are caught in the same program. And thus, if we need to be aware of this, and then we can start having more understanding of our own behavior and other people's behavior, and stop the condemning of self and others in the way that we currently do. That starts to create a removal of the cause of the problem, and to realize, this is the big thing, to realize that actually we're all the same awareness having a different experience. And so when we are in conflict with what we perceive to be another entity, we're actually in conflict with another expression of the same infinite one that we all are. And this is why I said earlier, the control system to divide and rule has to pull us into the perception of everything apart from everything else, because that's where the ground, the stadium, the rules of the game are about conflict, competition, dog eat dog, and all the rest of it. And this moving, or this expansion of our sense of self and the world, I am infinite consciousness having an experience, and so are you, and so are you, and so is everyone. We're all the same one consciousness. You start to break down these perception barriers of me and you, us and them. It's like I've said in one of the chapters of one of my books, I'm not David Icke. That's a name for my point of attention within infinite consciousness, my point of attention in this reality at this time. It's called David Icke. That's not who I am. I am infinite awareness having a experience called David Icke, and everyone else is the same, just calling a different name. And this changing of the way we perceive the world and each other starts to remove the cause of the problem, which is seeing everyone as apart from everyone else, and therefore, for me to win, someone else has got to lose. No, we haven't. That is the foundation from which everything can change. You know, you get people in a room who have some kind of expanded awareness, and they won't be nasty to each other. They won't try to get the better of each other. They won't try to get one-upmanship on the others. They won't try to put down anyone else so that they give themselves elevation by default. It's a very, very different way of interacting with each other, because you start to realize we're all one and we're all different experiences of the same one. You put people in the same room who are caught in, you know, I am Joe Bloggs and I am Ethel Jones and this is a dog-eat-dog world. You're gonna have a very, very different experience in that room with those people, those expressions of that perception of reality, than you are with the others. And it's the same with the world. We are the world. The world is a collective expression of 7 billion points of observation of infinite awareness. And depending on what those points of observation perceive as self and the world depends on what the collective experience is going to be. And that's why, you know, Einstein is supposed to have said words to the effect of, you cannot solve problems with the same level of awareness or consciousness that created them. It's an absolute gimme. It's a solid gold truth. And thus, we need to change our state of awareness, consciousness, change our sense of perception. Everything else will come from that. We don't need meetings and someone taking minutes to change the world. We need to change that which is creating the world, which is the collective human perception of self in the world. And that's why the awakening is absolutely crucial to everything. If there is no awakening to a greater level of awareness of self and reality, nothing is going to change, because what is creating what we want to change ain't going to change if that foundation that's creating it doesn't change. And this is what the control system is doing now. Quite, I would suggest, coldly and calculatedly. It is setting up world events in which everything is being thrown at us, whether it's war, conflict, financial crashes, whatever, to pull us into a state of fear, a state of anxiety, a low vibrational state which stops us having this expansion of awareness. They know what they're doing. And so this is a real challenge to people that are awakening. And that is to, as much as possible, disconnect yourself from what is happening in the world. I don't mean you walk away and don't do anything. Crikey, I spend 15 hours a day trying to do something. But you don't let it emotionally bring you down, because if you do, that's exactly what the control system wants. Because by bring you down, I mean bring you down vibrationally. So it's like seeing what's going on, understanding what's going on, making decisions about what to do about what's going on, but without at the same time connecting into what's going on in such a powerful emotional way that it's going to bring you down by your experiences of what's happening.
Thank you so much for that. I think about how we're so taught to be so negative to ourselves, of if I just beat up on myself, I can be a better person.
It's a joke though, isn't it?
Yeah. And
yeah, it's like Chipper was saying, you know, the concept of if I suffer, then I'll evolve. And if I put myself down, I'll somehow be a better person. You know, there's a difference. You see, one of the things we've done, because of the way our reality's been manipulated, is we have a misconception of what words really mean. And so love, you know, I love you, darling, saw you down to disco. Love, no, that's mind love, as I call it. And I've talked to people who work have worked and experienced in the mind control programs, and they say that if you can trigger certain chemicals in the brain, then in two people, you can get them to fall madly in love with each other. What is it? It's an attraction. It's a chemical, therefore vibrational attraction, but it's mind love. Heart love is so often expressed not by partners, although it certainly can, but by friendship, where friendships real friends don't have an agenda. They're not trying to get one-upmanship. They're not trying to be the dominant partner in a partnership in this kind of often, war of control that goes on called relationships. Whatever you do, they're there for you. Real friendship, real love. And it's this, we have to put words in front of it, like unconditional love. I call it heart love, and whatever, to give the understanding of what we're trying to say, rather than just love, which has lost its meaning through misuse, I would suggest. And if we don't, so we have this idea of people say you must love yourself. Well, there's mind love, which can express itself as narcissism of self. And there's real love, where you are your mate, you are your friend, and you're always there for yourself. It doesn't mean that friends don't say, hey, mate, I think that was a bit over the top, But they don't just walk away then. Oh, I'm not staying with you. You're over the top. So I'm your friend. And because I'm your friend, I'm going to tell you that behavior was not acceptable. We can do that with ourselves if we're friends to ourselves rather than enemies to ourselves. But of course, when you manipulate people to feel guilt about themselves, what is guilt? It's another one of these low vibrational emotions that I'm talking about that give off this vibrational frequency band that these entities and forces feed off. So actually, guilt is identifying and accepting, yes, I would have done that differently and I will next time. That's different. But this self-loathing that people go through and are encouraged to go through is something that is a major part of the vibrational entrapment that we suffer. So, yeah, you're born into a world where your parents have been through the programming and they give you a view of the world, not through malevolence, but because they think it's what they need to teach you, because they've bought the idea that that's how things are. You then go to school and university and people are telling you a view of yourself and the world. The media is constantly 24/7 now in all its expressions, giving you a version of the world and yourself. And we need to be kind to ourselves. It's no wonder that people can go through an entire lifetime in this reality, believing total nonsense about themselves and the world. Why wouldn't they, when that's all they know and all they've been told? And so we need to be kind to ourselves. I see a lot of people who start to wake up and see the way the world's manipulated as opposed to how they saw it before, and they feel this incredible embarrassment about the fact that they believed nonsense before. Don't be embarrassed. Punch the air, mate. Celebrate the fact that you are breaking out of it. That's just something to celebrate, not something to be embarrassed about what went before. Crikey, why wouldn't you think what you thought before? That's what everyone was telling you. But it's given the scale of the programming, the scale of the imposition of a certain view of self in the world, it's amazing that anyone wakes up and sees it for what it is. And now enormous numbers are doing so. We should be celebrating that and being kind to ourselves and celebrating the fact that we're starting to see what it's very, very difficult to see.
Thank you so much. That's very helpful.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Green Meadow. The next area is transition and current events. David, in the past you have always said World War III was in the elite's game plan to take down the last remaining superpower, the US. Cliff, and since he's on the call, he might be able to elaborate further, in his latest post, he sees that the elite are likely to try to pull another USS Liberty Gulf of Tonkin false flag incident early in March to bring about World War III possibly. Unlike the WebBot's previous forecast, this one coincides with a data discontinuity and perpetual release language. You said in the Daily Bell interview that a fundamental transformation of human society will only come with a fundamental transformation of humanity's perception of itself and the world. I agree, but it's as if the fundamental transformation will likely occur after an event so large and shocking that people are shooken and waken up and need to take action. Planning World War III is a dangerous game even for the smartest tacticians out there. Can you see a possibility where the elite make a giant mistake, lose control, that leads to their downfall?
Well, I do think that what we're seeing and what presents itself as strutting arrogance, we're completely in control, is cover for panic, actually, in many ways, about this awakening that's going on. You see, when you look at the personality trait called narcissism, one of the expressions of narcissism is lack of self-esteem, right? It seems ironic because the narcissist is all up front. It's arrogance. It wants to control. It wants to dictate. But behind it, it is suffering from lack of self-esteem. And I see this in the control system and those that run it. They are terrified of humans waking up because we, in our expanded open awareness state, have far more power than the control system. What's more, the number of people in full knowledge of what they're doing and where they want to take the world is absolutely tiny compared with 7 billion people. So even in the numbers game, they're in desperate trouble if enough people wake up and start to get involved in this. And so they are pushing this on in many ways in a real rush now, because for me, there is a race, for want of a word, for them to lock down the system with microchips and control and suppression that would make Orwell wince before enough people have awoken to the point where the House of Cards comes down. Because the House of Cards, the control system, is absolutely founded on people in vast numbers being asleep. And therefore, we're getting back to what I talked about a few minutes ago about instead of looking for solutions, let's remove the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem of human control is humans have been in this coma, this amnesic state, which has been cast upon us, and therefore the removing the cause of the problem is to break out of that coma. They know that, and there's this rush to lock down the system globally as fast as they can. And I have absolutely no doubt that they are, as I speak, in the way that we perceive time, behind what where they wanted to be at this point. But in terms of the Third World War, quite demonstrably, through purely 5 sense level research, this has been in the program, in the agenda, at least back to the 19th century. And I quote in my talks a guy called Wesley Clark, who was, of course, he was the running NATO and ran the NATO attacks on former Yugoslavia, etc. And he said in an interview in 2007 on a television program that immediately after 9/11, he was told that there was a coup being plotted by Dick Cheney, Don Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, and what he called, quote, half a dozen other collaborators from the Project for the New American Century, which was, of course, that neocon organization behind the imposition of the Patriot Act and the war on terror and all that. And this coup he was told about immediately after 9/11, including an invasion of Iraq. And what he said on this, which was, of course, not even talked about until 2002, even though covertly it had been planned a long time before. And then he said in this interview that 6 weeks after he was told that, after 9/11, he saw the same officer at the Pentagon who told him that, and he asked him, why haven't we attacked Iraq? Are we going to attack Iraq? And he said, the officer said to him, sir, it's worse than that. He said that the officer picked up a piece of paper off his desk and said, I've just got this memo from the Secretary of Defense's office. It says we're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years, and we're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. And he said that the aim of the plot, is what Clark said, is they wanted us to destabilize the Middle East, turn it upside down, and make it under our control. So these things are not planned domino by domino. The domino fall is planned before the first domino is pushed. And so what we're seeing now in this, oh my goodness, head-shaking, blatant nonsense demonizing Iran is pressing for the next stage of this long-term agenda, which, as I've been saying for a long time, others have too, is designed to lead to World War III for a simple, overwhelming reason, although there are many others too. When you realize where they want to take us and the methods they use to take us there, the world immediately starts to clear and become with a clarity of seeing behind the words and seeing behind the movements on the chessboard. First of all, they want a world government to dictate all global politics, all global government. And under that would be a series of ministries which would eventually encompass the private corporations of today. So there will be an oil ministry that will control all global oil production. There'd be a global food ministry that do the same for food. There'd be a global biotech, a global excuse for health ministry, which would control all global health and dictate from the center. Under that, they want a series of unions as the second level of control. And we have the European Union where I'm sitting now, which is just a bureaucratic, centralized dictatorship. That's all it is. And it's not even got to where it wants to go yet. They want one in the Americas. They want in Australia, Far East. They want one in the Middle East. They've got the African Union already, etc. And along with the world government, they want a world army to impose the will of the world government. And they want a world central bank to dictate all global finance. And they want a global currency, which would not be physical cash. It would only be one single electronic currency. And they want a policy of microchipping children at birth as a matter of course. So that's where they want to take us. The way they take us there is basically by 2 techniques. One I called years ago problem, reaction, solution. You create a problem covertly, you blame someone else for it, you use an unquestioning media to tell the public the version of the problem you want them to believe, and you want the public then to react with fear, again, low vibrational emotion, or anger and outrage, and so that you can then take the covert problem from the reaction, do something, and then offer the solution to the problem you've created, which is changes in society, which advance your agenda for centralization of power in all areas of our lives and a global Orwellian state. And the other one is what I call the totalitarian tiptoe, whereby you start at A and you know you're going to B, C, and D, and eventually Z, but you don't tell the people that, and you go in steps from A to C to E. You go as fast as you can, but not so fast that you alert people to the fact that there's a pattern here. We're going in a certain direction. Every stage, every step is promoted and sold as individual in and of itself. So they're the 2 things, where they want to take us and how they're going to take us there. There's another version of problem reaction solution that I call no problem reaction solution. And that's where there's not a real problem, even covertly manipulated. You've invented it. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq is the most classic example. And now we have this, nuclear power coming in Iran kind of example and all that stuff. And so when you bring these things together and you look at the world today, if you want a world government dictating to every country, you cannot have superpowers in the world that have the financial and military might to say no to you. So to bring about world government, they have to dismantle the superpowers. This is why America has been systematically dismantled in terms of its economy, why its massive once manufacturing industrial base has been replaced by so-called service industries, which are dependent on the rest of the world where the real manufacturing is in places like the Far East, etc. And why you have, at a time when American people are in such horrific distress financially, that if you put all the hidden costs together and add it all in, the American government is spending around, maybe in excess of $1 trillion a year on the American military fighting abroad overwhelmingly. Now, if you look at that in a dispassionate way and you say, okay, let's think about this. This is the government of America, right? Yeah. Okay. And it's there to serve the interests of Americans. Yeah. So why is it spending $1 trillion on the military when all this financial economic mayhem is going on among its own people with its own borders? Because of this. It's not the American military and it's not the American government. What it is a major global satellite government of the global network, and thus it is serving the interests of the global network and not the people of America. And the interest of the network is to go on a campaign of conquest in country after country, removing regimes it wants rid of and putting in regimes that suit it. And to do that, it needs a major military operation. So it gets its satellite in America to spend $1 trillion of American people's money to fund a military which is not serving the interests of Americans, but is serving the interests of the cabal that control the American government. It's the same in Britain, it's the same in France, it's the same in Germany, and thus this cabal that controls America and its military also controls NATO and the other countries of NATO, dominated, of course, by the United States. And so what we're seeing now is this agenda to destroy the superpowers, including that China and Russia, you might say, as major powers in the world, to destroy them in a third world war and bring the world to its knees so that they then can come forward and say the only way out of this is A, B, C, and D. And we've seen it. See, when this cabal manipulated World War I, at the end of World War I, power was in far fewer hands in the world than it was before. And they had the first effort at a global organization, the League of Nations. When that didn't kind of run on and stick, they had a Second World War. And of course, after the Second World War, power is in even fewer hands than it was after the first. And we had this explosion of global institutions. First of all, we had it justified the United Nations. Then we had the Bretton Woods Agreement, the World Bank, the IMF, and all these things, globally centralizing power, dictating to all countries. And the idea is that the Third World War would complete this process of bringing an end to the old order, bringing to an end to these super states that could say no to any world government, and then bringing in the structure of world government as a result of that problem reaction solution. And we're seeing it now. We have a de facto world government already. It's called the G8, it's called the G20, it's called the international community, and in an even more focused way, it's called the UN Security Council. We have a world army, it's called NATO. This is why when America, France, and Britain started bombing Libya, they handed it over very quickly, officially, to NATO, setting the precedent. I said in a book written in 1994, watch for NATO operating out of the North Atlantic region as in a totalitarian tiptoe to the world army. And we're seeing now, as a result of this economic collapse engineered from 2008 by this cabal themselves that control the banking system and control the credit ratings agencies like Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch Ratings that control 95% of the credit rating industry, and their credit rating going down is disastrous economically for the country they're targeting. And so we're seeing this unfold, and the pieces are being moved into place, and they want one more big push to get people to accept going from de facto to fully fledged, and the Third World War is what they want. And so we're seeing manipulated unrest in the Middle East. When you look at what happened in Libya, the rebels were actually planted by the NATO countries, armed by the NATO countries through places like Qatar. The same is happening in Syria. And the idea, and in Egypt, some organizations that are connected to this cabal that train people in public civil disobedience, etc., have admitted that they trained people in Egypt, in places like Serbia, and the American embassy in Cairo was involved, and some of them were flown to America for training to trigger that Egyptian revolution. And you had in Egypt a regime under Mubarak, a military regime basically, that was apart from Israel just about the recipient of the biggest military grants that America gives out to any country. And so for 30 years, America was funding, i.e. the cabal that controls the American government was funding this military control of Egypt. And then suddenly, Hillary Clinton goes from Mubarak's a family friend to he must go, he's a tyrant. And then what happened? He goes, but the same people stay in power, i.e. the military. But what they did because it's all a mind game in the end. What they did with the pictures of and what went on in Egypt is they used that as a trigger to encourage others to get into the streets. And what these others, these vast majority of genuine people who often have genuine grievances don't realize is that they're just being played like a vast number of extras in a movie to bring about an end which is absolutely not good for them. And then, of course, the end, the key prize that they want is Iran, because they know of the knock-on effect of that. And when, you see now for some time Russia and China getting closer together militarily and politically, then you have the same duo starting to challenge. First of all, they abstained in the Security Council when they could have stopped it, actually, when the vote was made over Libya. They have voted against a recent UN resolution about Syria. They're now saying basically leave Iran alone, and China has said mess with Pakistan and you mess with us. You can see the pieces being put into place for this third global conflict that they have been planning for so long.
Yeah, it looks like, unfortunately, the totalitarian tiptoe is being thrown out the window and the ultimate problem solutions about to come in place. Cliff, did you have any comments?
Oh, quite a few thousand, but none of them really pertinent.
Hiya, Cliff.
How are you doing, David?
I'm good, mate.
Issue, well, I'm really in an emotional stew over it all because I come from a military background. I'm an Aikidoist and a martial arts kind of guy, and here I see so many of my friends in the military being used so badly in this, and I have relatives over there with Afghanistan and Iraq, and the upcoming war is going to be horrific. These guys, I don't know how much you know about our history here, but I'm a linguist. I came up out of the software world and discovered that through an Enlightenment experience in the early 80s, I discovered vibration and how words have power and the vibratory nature of them and so forth. So I started looking at that on the internet because so many people were leaking out all this psychic stuff all the time. And the leaks about this Israeli mistake, which I'm now calling the Zionist mistake, are horrific. 1.289 billion people will die if they launch this. And the rest of us, any that survive, won't like being around. My issue, though, I mean, I'm sorry to get emotionally involved with that aspect of it and allow it to.
I completely understand. I completely understand, because you look at the world today, and it's very easy to despair.
Yeah, and my despair really is that is more frustration, because I am a warrior, and I'd be in other circumstances I would start marching towards Washington D.C. and knocking heads with any of the officialdom that I met along the way and convince them that this behavior is not acceptable. But I have another way of doing this because I'm sort of trapped here. I thought, well, I know a guy who travels all around the planet who has exposure to many, many, many different languages. And being an Aikidoist, I love the idea of using a feather's weight to throw 10,000 pounds. Right. So what I want to propose to David Icke is that he answer a question now or in the future that will change the vibratory nature of reality around us by coming up with an alternative honorific in English. Given that English is the language of dominance of the planet and the cabal, and given that English has within it honorifics that only relate to royalty, Sir, Earl, Duke, all of that kind of stuff, and that Sir actually relates and derives from serpent, and given that the Russians ran into the same situation in their revolution in 1917 before they were Bolshevik, and they ended up choosing the word comrade in their language, tovarish, to express this idea, I want to change the vibration of reality by having us all have a word to where I could say to David, I wouldn't say, hello, sir, how are you doing, to express my respect for him and how I see his expression as an honorable being. But I need a new word that would say to him, hello, awake and aware human. I am also aware and awake, and I respect you for your work in this and for being who you are. And we need that word. I don't have it. I've looked for it. So I'm just going to say it's out there. If anybody's got one, maybe they can give it to David. He goes out around quite a bit.
How about I love you and mean
Again,
it?
I think that's the problem. You're correct. It's been degraded. They've taken that and they've run it through the pornography mill and all of the other TV crap. And in your left, I mean, look at what the Greeks and the Romans had done with agape, amore, eros, how they've truly gotten into it all. I just don't know. I'm frustrated then. I like the idea of mate, but it's a little bit sexist.
Oh, well, yeah, I use that a lot. Hello, mate. All right.
Hello, mate. I agree.
For me, men or women, hello, mate. All right. Yeah. I mean, that's the way I am. It's me. But I'm fascinated by linguistics because what you just said is a very important thing. What we see as words is actually just a vibrational state, which we hear or we write. I found it fascinating when I first came across the work of people like this Japanese man, Mr. Emoto. And I spent a weekend with him in a hotel talking in London once, talking to him for hours on end, where he has got this technique. I've been to his place in Japan, where he does it in Tokyo, where he gets canisters of water and he puts things on the side. It might be a mobile phone. It might be a word like I love you, love and appreciation, or I hate you, I want to kill you. And then he freezes the water very, very quickly with this technology he's got in Tokyo, and then photographs the water crystals in each one. And the difference in the crystals from words of love and appreciation to words of I hate you, I want to kill you is extraordinary. The I love you and love and appreciation, it's a beautiful, geometrically perfect like a snowdrop under a microscope. It's beautiful. And then you look at the one which comes from I hate you, I want to kill you. It's a mess. It's like someone has dropped a blob of something on the floor. It's amazing. And people say, well, why is that? Well, it's real simple, because we see in the holographic decoded realm the words love or hate. But their base form, whether they're written or spoken, is vibrational. It's waveform, which is the base form of everything in this reality. And thus, when you put hate or love words on a piece of paper on the side of that water, it is actually generating the vibration of that word through the water, which you can then photograph through the water crystals. One of the things I include in this new book, Remember Who You Are, is 6 experiments they've done at the Stuttgart Aerospace Institute in Germany with water. They found a way of photographing the information in droplets of water. And they started doing experiments on this. One of the things they did, they got this big canister of water, and they put a flower in it, just a flower in the water. One flower in one big canister of water. They then took the flower out and took droplets and photographed the droplets, and every single droplet had that flower in its entirety, obviously in a smaller form, in each droplet. They then got people from the local community. They got this big tank of water, and they said to them to go to the tank, take 4 droplets out of the tank, and go and put those droplets in a dish with their name on. They then photographed with the technology they have the different 4 droplets from these people, and I put a picture in the book. It's amazing, really, because every one of the 4 droplets look the same, but everyone's 4 droplets look different. In other words, just the act of taking a droplet of water and putting it into a dish, that water has absorbed your unique energy field. This is what is happening with words, and this is why, I mean, Cliff, you'll notice, much if not more than most people, the control system use language, the way they write legislation, the way they announce things and all the rest of it, using specific knowledge of linguistics because of the vibrational impact that it will have, which is why we need to, again, in this process of stopping ourselves and pulling out of the program by being aware of the program, is to watch what we say and how we say it, because we are impacting all the time on the vibrational field, the C, by what we're putting into it that way. And for me, Cliff, I think that because you can have language, words that are vibrations, so you write the word hate or love and you create the vibration of hate or love, in the same way it comes the other way. And thus, as we expand our consciousness and go into different levels of awareness and different vibrational states, then through that, in the other direction, will come changes in language, changes in words and speech that will come from this expansion of consciousness. Because if you look at it, again, what's happening now from the control system's point of view is our language is going in exactly the direction that George Orwell envisaged, because he got his information from the Fabian Society. It wasn't a novel. It was a novel type expression of what he knew the game plan was. That's why he was so accurate. Same with Aldous Huxley and Brave New World. And so he talked about newspeak replacing old speak. Newspeak were words that said nothing. That's what political correctness is all about. Creating a language in which no one expresses anything. And then you've got the text speak that's coming in, and clipped words. All these clipped words in text speak and stuff are having an impact, not only on the world vibrationally, but also, as Orwell envisaged, that at the mind level, the lower mind level anyway, the conscious mind level, we think in words. And if you can systematically reduce the number of words available to express verbally concepts, thoughts, etc., you are reducing also in the people the ability to even articulate on the conscious mind level your own thoughts in any detail. This is all systematically done. And, you know, people laugh at me because I've got this mobile phone, which I don't use that mobile phone. I've never had it to me ear once. I use it to go on the internet when I'm traveling, and I use it to send texts. And I insist when I send texts that my language is as it would be if I was writing a book or a letter. And what you're writing it that for, with all the punctuation and words in for, because I will not give in to this blooming text speak, because I know where it wants to take us. Language is so important in all these different expressions, both in control and also in setting us free.
That's true. It's for me, language is the most important thing. It's what set me on this path years ago when I discovered in '93 how they were manipulating us all through language, and I'd been a victim of it all my life. I went through that anger and the shock and the disillusionment and the embarrassment, and here I am now, and I'm older and balder and a little bit more pissed.
The other interesting thing you raised there, Cliff, and this is a vital part of this for me, is that the control system is a pyramid. And most of the people holding the pyramid up don't realize what they're holding up. And that includes the armed forces. It includes most of law enforcement in general. And thus, instead of going down the road of being embarrassed, I fought in this war and I fought in that war, it's again to go through this process of, hey, let's celebrate. I've sussed it and I'm out of here. I'm not giving my body, I'm not giving myself to the system anymore. And it's a simple thing like they used to say in the 60s. What if we had a war and no one turned up? See, the people that declare wars don't fight them. They're sipping coffee in the White House or some drinking club in bloody Washington. If George Bush, boy George Bush, had been on the front line in Afghanistan when the first bullet went off, he'd have been under a bed in Houston when the second one fired. Yeah. I mean, these people they don't go into these areas. What they say is, in different countries at war with each other, one hierarchy says we're going to go to war with this country, that hierarchy says we're going to war with that country, and the two hierarchies in these opposing countries with their population dying and killing each other are controlled by the same global cabal that want the fight to happen as part of the divide and rule and conquer. And this is why it is so important to get this information to those in uniform, because if they walk away and say, we're not doing it anymore, the game's up, because without them, there can be no war. Because, I mean, if Bush and Putin and all these people in China and all, they want to fight each other, I've got no problem. I mean, I'll organize it as long as I can shut the door behind me and walk away. But that's not the way it is. And it's the theme of everything that we talk about is manipulating people to give their power away. And it's never more blatant than in the military and in law enforcement. But you can take your power back in a second. It's just a choice. And, and one of the things I've noticed in so many people in uniform is physical courage is so often not a problem. I mean, some of the feats of physical courage are fantastic when they go and protect their mates in battle and stuff like that, when they're putting their life big time on the line. Feats of amazing physical courage. But the same people that do that are terrified of saying the wrong word to someone with more stripes or pips on their arm. And it's that kind of courage, the second types of courage, to say no. Because, people say, conscientious rejections in war are cowards. No, they're not. The vast majority aren't cowards. It takes a courage to go against the great mass of war fever that's going on and say, no, I ain't doing it. That's an amazing expression of courage. It's not physical courage. It's moral courage. I'm not playing a part in something I don't believe in. And if this could break out in the uniformed professions, well, then we are really making progress then.
David, Cliff, sorry, go
could
ahead.
I intrude just for one thing? David, you bring up just an excellent and beautiful point, and your last few words are most telling. If this could break out. And that was really the point of my question about the honorific, because
Right.
I envision a world where a fellow in the military who is aware and awake could go on up to someone else and use some word, comrade, tovarish, whatever, to someone else that he knows is aware and awake, and that would start a vibrational change that was within that organization. And I reference specifically friends of mine in Moscow at the beginning of the White Revolution stage then, because they said that what started it off was the dog walking hour, where everybody got so disgusted with the continual manipulation of the news that between 9 and 10 at night when national news was on, they would go out and walk their dogs. And it was discovering so many tens of thousands of other people walking their dogs that gave them all collective courage to begin saying no. And that's the end of my comment, and I'll go offline now.
Yeah, I see. I see where you're going with that. I used to say to people in talks years ago, we identify ourselves with not the true self, but the experience. So we say to people, "What are you?" And they say, "I'm a miner. I'm a journalist." Or I'm a Christian, or I'm a Jew, or I'm whatever. And wouldn't it be great if we went up to each other and said, "I'm all that exists. Nice to meet you." And the other person said, "So am I. Nice to meet you." To absolutely move the point of self-identity from I am the experience I'm having, which is all it is, to I am that which is having the experience, and I am that which is you having a different experience. Once we move that point of self-identity, that point of observing self in the world, everything shifts, not least our vibrational state, and then everything starts to move. It's to cease to identify with the experience, the name, the job, the income bracket, the history, and start to self-identify with that infinite awareness which is having that experience. Everything shifts then. Everything changes. I mean, someone who is coming from the point of I am all that is, has been, and ever can be, having an experience, is going to go to war and slaughter those who are also that same all that is, has been, and ever can be, having a different experience? No way. But you get caught in the five senses, the world of division, of limitation, of fear, you'll go and do that, and they do.
Yeah, David, Cliff, we here at Timemark Radio Network, we're all about actionable things that we can do, and this is a question for both of you, which Lenny would like to pose. Lenny?
Hi. David, would you accept the following as a positive course of action to practice feeling in one's body the emotion of peace? This action is based on research showing that change in the way we feel about ourselves and our world has the potential to affect the world itself, just as what you've been saying.
Absolutely.
So that the person feeling the peace becomes a transmitter of peace. And it works. I guess the International Peace Project in the Middle East showed during the 1980s that transcendental meditators were able to reduce violence in surrounding communities by having a critical mass of meditators participating and feeling peace. So it seems like love is the greatest force in the world, and that feeling of peace can be expressed not only by meditators and for those who don't meditate, perhaps by art, by music, by poetry. So what would be your suggestion here?
I'm absolutely with you. I'm not even an open door. The door ain't there. And what I've done in this new book, Remember Who You Are, in the last chapter, is it talked about exactly this, and how instead of going on protests and marches where the marchers and protesters are hurling abuse in all directions, what's that doing? It's creating the very vibrational disharmony, which is feeding the dragon, if you like, feeding the energy field that they want, as they want the energy field to be. What I'm suggesting is that, people go in vast numbers and therefore physically are showing they're not having it anymore, but then they do exactly what you're talking about. They just go into this state of peace. And, I've seen it done collectively when a large number of people get together in that place of love and peace in relation to those they're protesting about, as well as anyone else. You create an energy which is changing the energy field of the sea, and thus changing it from what it is to what it can be. And I'm suggesting that people organize these big numbers of people, large numbers of people, to go to major vortex points. These Satanists are going to these vortex points and these power centers, and they're doing their rituals. We should be going to power points in vast numbers, and just sitting there together and joining as one energy field, going into this space of peace and love, and love in its true sense. And that's not only good for the collective, it's good for the individual personality, if you like, as we experience it, because of the impact it has upon us. I mean, over the last few weeks, I don't know why, but every now and again, I've gone into this place out sort of spontaneously. I've not even tried, where it's a state of peace and a state of where everything's okay. Everything's fine when you go into that space. There's no worry. There's no fear. There's no anxiety. You just go into the place of, this is the word, calm. You go into a place of calm. And if you're in a place of calm, you are transmitting a state of calm. It's interesting when I've seen this happen, actually, where there's a booming row going on, an argument going on in some room, some office. And the atmosphere, as they say, you could cut the atmosphere with a knife. Why? Because of the energy generated as a result. And then someone goes in who's in a calm state. It's had nothing to do with the argument, and you watch them get pulled in, and eventually they're in the same state, because basically the energy sea has got them and influenced them. And we can do that in reverse. And what I've got on my website is a place where people can go, and there are certain times when they can do it. And it's called Every Heart Makes a Difference. And I'm going to relaunch it because of what's in this new book and what I've just described. I'm going to relaunch this again on the website, but it's been there for a while. It's called Awakening the World. Every Heart Makes a Difference. And it's to get people together, and we focus on a picture every night, and there are different times around the world, but there's a time when everyone can come together, but it's obviously difficult in some parts of the world because of the time difference. And we just focus on this picture, and we send it love, peace, calm from the heart. And I know from doing it how it affects me. So this is really, really, really important that we meet the challenge with vehement determination. We do not walk away through fear, but neither do we become what we are trying to change. As I've said in my books, what you fight, you become. And if we're still trying to fight the system, well, it's just confirmation that the system still got us. We have to, I suggest, stop cooperating with the system, stop cooperating with our own enslavement. I was walking through my little town here on this island off the south coast of England. I took a picture of it for one of my talks, and it was just people you'd meet in the pub with their luminous jackets on, and they were working on this piece of technology in the middle of the street, and on the side of the van it had closed circuit TV, camera limited or whatever it was. They were putting up cameras in the streets to spy on their fellow people who go to the same pubs that they do, and what they're doing is contributing to their own enslavement. They are helping to build their own prison. And that's what we're being manipulated to do. If we don't do that, if we refuse to cooperate in the infinite tapestry of ways that we can with our own enslavement, then we cannot be enslaved, because there's not enough people who absolutely in full knowledge want to do this to do it. They have to get us to do it to each other. And so it's non-violent, non-cooperation. And it is coming from this space of peace and love. You see, when you meet these people who are full of hate and they're full of hostility and want to fight. I was in New York at the Wall Street protests in November for about 3 days when I was speaking there. And you saw the hostility in so many of the policemen. They wanted to fight. But if you meet them with violence or hostility, you're giving them what they want. And you're also giving them the energy that they're giving you. But if you just stop and you refuse to move, you refuse to budge, you refuse to have your rights and your freedoms taken away like that, or you self-imposed upon, but you do it in a way that has the unique power of being peaceful and loving, but being vehemently determined, it is a combination that they cannot understand. And if they come into contact with it, they must be affected by it, because it's interesting when you look at the research that's been done into the energetic power of the heart as opposed to the brain, and you look at the energetic power that has been measured at places like the Heart Math Institute in America, have had the thousands and thousands of times more powerful the energetic field is from love and peace and appreciation than it is from love and hate and all the rest of it. You can see that the power is there innate within us to change the information state of the energy sea we live in, and therefore change the way that people are affected by that. It's just there. The power is there. What this control system works 24/7 all our lives to do is to stop us remembering who we are, and thus the power that we have to effect our own reality and our own experience. I'm all with you, Lenny. I couldn't be more with you.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm wondering if Cliff, if you have anything that you would like to say about resistance and heart energy, or anything at all.
I know from my own personal experience in Aikido that it's possible to change yourself in the process of these activities. And so, for instance, as a novice, you get into the room and you're practicing, you think you're doing these grappling arts and you're going to learn self-defense and so on. And then at some point in the process, you discover, geez, you're starting to see everybody's aura and you don't realize it at the time, but they're becoming ki-filled, and their aura is lifting up off their body, and they're starting to smile a lot. Their skin becomes tighter, their muscles are tighter, their eyes are brighter. And then you realize at some point it must be happening to you as well, because you're getting a real kick out of all of this. And so you stick on with this, and you realize that this is part of your nature. Now, some people it's yoga or other expressions, dance or whatever, but nonetheless they get that ki feeling and they become ki-filled. And that's what we need. I think the idea of protests are absurd. We need to create a system that is outside of their system, that's self-organizing. One way to convince them of our power, to demonstrate that the absolutely cannot be overcome nor controlled energy is here, would be if we all got together and instead of protesting, we all decided we were going to go and have a mass yoga teach-in, pie bake, Aikido key master kind of a thing, and people showed up, and instead of the demonstrations we had down here in Olympia with the Occupy, which left the parks and so forth debilitated and marked, mainly because of the anger and the resentment that the people had not being able to express themselves. What we should have done was to have had that kind of an expression where we'd sit in there and build our ki up and contribute to the environment around us and teach people how to make pies and be more self-sufficient and so on, and basically stand in their face the control system and say, you control me not, and I'm going to show others how to also not be controlled. And in the meantime, I'm going to fill my key up so much that it reaches down to the core of the planet and it takes root and it extends all the way out beyond the moon, and I defy you to come and try and move it.
Absolutely. And, frustration is a big thing, Cliff. I completely agree with you. There's so much frustration in the world because the world is designed to produce frustration, which, again, is the energy that these people feed off. And you can either let frustration go by knocking the crap out of somebody or dying of a heart attack, or you can transform frustration into something else positive, because it's just an energy, and therefore it can be changed into something else. And when you are something else, it must become something else. It's so important. Energy is where the change will take place. Energy, not in the play out world, which is just an expression of energy made manifest, and what the energy is made manifest. The energetic level is what's going to change the world. That's where the answers lie, and that's why the answers lie in all of us, because we are at the base. We are energy. Everything is energy, but I mean, this whole reality is a waveform information construct and potential that we are interacting with, and the way we interact with it depends on our vibrational state, thus how we interact with another vibrational state, and that depends on our state of being. Are we in frustration, or are we in peace? Are we in anger, or are we in love? And this is where the game is being played. When we look on the television news and we see what's going on in the world, we think we're seeing it as it is. We're not. We're seeing a projection of an energetic state. And energetic states interacting with each other, and that's where the answers lie. It's like you're watching a movie in a theater, and you don't like the movie, so you go up to the screen and you start hurling abuse at it and tell it to stop and tell it to change. It ain't gonna stop. It's a projection. If you're gonna change the movie, you've got to go to the back of the theater and change the reel. What's being projected? Then the movie must change, and that projection is our state of being, the way we self-identify, the way we interact with others in the world. That changes, everything changes. That doesn't change, nothing changes.
Okay, I'll hand it over to Five Cook.
Yes, thank you. David, I enjoyed listening to you talk about people's awakenings, and that kind of brings a chord with me. I've always been interested in consciousness, and especially consciousness versus mind. Who do you think is the conscious mind? I see consciousness as a knowing we have versus the mind, roof brain chatter, a term I borrowed from Joseph Chilton Pierce. Is the consciousness all of us, including the reptilians, or where do you draw lines?
Well, I think everything is conscious. Every blade of grass, every breath of air, everything is conscious. It's just what level of consciousness, what point of observation. But I completely agree with your opening remarks. I know it's all in the end. Cliff's here. It's all in the end linguistics, in the sense of what a word means to you rather than what it means to someone else. I remember Credo Mutwa telling me he was in another African country once, Credo Mutwa, the Zulu shaman, and he was sitting around and they were eating, and he said to the person next to him in Zulu language, "I miss my mother." And the guy next to him, who came from another language, helped him up and then led him to the toilet, because that meant I want to go to the toilet. So language is what it means to you. And but the way I use the words to articulate the difference between one level and another level of awareness is mind and consciousness. You use the same term just then. I think I say the body mind, as I call it, is like a biological computer. It's the interface between consciousness and this reality in many ways. It's deeper than that, but that's the simple way of describing it. For instance, I'm sitting at the moment in front of a desktop computer, and people say I'm going on the internet. Well, you're not. The computer's going on the internet. You're observing and interacting with the internet through the computer. And I use it symbolically. Me now sitting here in front of the keyboard with the mouse, I am what I say consciousness is. And the computer in front of me, which allows me to interact with this reality, the cosmic internet, as I call it, is mind-body. And the control system, which understands this in its deep inner core, is seeking to pull our point of observation into the computer. So I'm sitting here, and I can make the computer go to this website or that website. When you lose contact, influence of the greater self, because your point of observation has been pulled into the computer level, the body-mind level alone, I mean, we need to be in that level or we don't interface with this reality, but alone, dominant, then the computer symbolically is now deciding where it's going on the internet and what it thinks of it. And you're sitting here, you're smacking the keyboard, you're banging the mouse, the computer's not reacting. And this is the situation that they want us in, because once we our point of attention has been pulled into, if you like, body mind computer level, biological computer level, then we see the world and self in very programmed ways, and very limited ways compared with the person sitting at the keyboard. And so crucially, individually and collectively, for anyone to awaken to the greater understanding of everything, is that, I mean, we use these terms all the time. We need to open our minds, open our body mind, and let consciousness in. And what I said earlier, if we move our point of observation of self from the computer, I'm David Icke, who writes books and stuff, to I am infinite awareness sitting at the keyboard, having an experience through this body computer, then that definition of self-identity immediately starts to open your mind to the greater self. And then suddenly, as you rightly say, the intuition starts to move, you start to become more sensitive, and you start to know. The reason that body mind thinks is because it has to try to work it out from a very limited range of knowledge and awareness. Once you go into consciousness, you start to intuitively know, because you're accessing that level of self that does know. And when you think about it, that when you look at how the control system is playing this scam, once you are disconnected, you're never disconnected literally, but disconnected from an awareness and influence of your greater self, then in body-mind point of observation, you've got one place to look to try to get a fix on who you are and what's happening in the world, and that's out through the eyes, not that it really is, but keep it simple, and out through the ears. And coming the other way is a education system, a global media, parents who've been through the same system and been programmed to have the same view, peer pressure around you, all telling you who you are and what's happening in the world, and ridiculing or condemning you if you have a different view. And therefore, the idea is to isolate people in body mind and then program that isolated awareness with a version of self and the world that suits the control system. You have no power. You're just little me. And the system's the one you have to follow, and all these things. And so crucial to everything is opening the mind to the greater self. And it's, for me, I call it the blank sheet of paper. You have a blank sheet of paper in front of you in your mind, and now anything's possible. You're not anymore going to fill that piece of paper with what people have told you is true. No, you're going to put aside belief of all kind. You're going to put aside preconceived idea of everything. And what's going on that paper in terms of the way you're going to see the world and self from now on is what information makes sense to you, what you intuitively feel, not what someone's told you you must think and you must feel. And from that point of as Socrates said, or supposed to have said in ancient Greece, wisdom is knowing how little we know. When you come from that perspective, it doesn't mean you believe everything. Of course you don't. You look at it, you question it, you think about it, you intuitively put it through the intuition scanner, if you like. But you're not, by reflex action, dismissing anything just because it doesn't fit with what you've been told. And I say to people, I personally don't believe anything. And people go, what? You got to believe something. I don't believe anything. What I have at any point is a perception of how things are. That's it. And it's dancing on its feet, and it's moving from side to side, and it's ready to move in any direction at any time in the light of new insight, new intuitive knowing, new information. And therefore, you've not got a belief system to move because it's already fluid, because you know that by definition, you cannot know at any point in this world that we're in everything there is to know. This is why it's so ludicrous to say all you need to know to live your life and everything is to read these pages between two covers called a Bible or a Quran or whatever. It's ludicrous. We're living within all possibility. What do you mean it's all between two covers? No, it's not. It's within infinity. And thus, if you get caught in beliefs and preconceived ideas, they start to solidify. It's like a religious belief. This phrase I have, if you can tell me what you believe, if you can give it a name, you're in a prison. Because once you can give it a name, I don't care if it's Buddhism or what it is, you give it a name, it starts to solidify. It gets rules and regulations. If you don't act in a certain way, you're not a so-and-so anymore. And the other so-and-so start giving you a hard time for not being a so-and-so, true to the so-and-so belief system. So beliefs are prisons of the mind, all of them. And what I'm suggesting is let's just perceive at any point in time how we see things, knowing that it's a fraction of what there is to see. Thus, we're always open to new information, new insight, and moving and saying, hey, I can see that from another angle now. I think it's more like this. Because then the cutting edge of your awareness and collective awareness is constantly moving. How can the cutting edge not constantly move within all possibility? Only if we think we know it all, when we don't.
And that's an awfully boring life to
you're so right.
That. Yes. Well, thank you very much. I know you're probably getting short on time, David, so I'm going to pass it back to Jules. And thank you for your time with me.
Pleasure talking to you.
David, thank you for your time tonight. Aware and awakened individual, I love you. I hope the discussion has been enjoyable for you as it has been for us. If not, bad luck, mate.
Now, thanks, Jules. I'm all that has been and ever can be. Pleased to meet you.
Yeah. Now that we are in the year 2012, will humans awaken and grab their collective destiny? Will the sheep become lions? We hope so. The shockwave of the future is rapidly approaching, and make no mistake, nothing short of both our and our progeny's future will be decided by our actions and inactions in the coming months and years. Let's make sure our actions count. On behalf of Fox and all the members of the WebWatt Forum and Time Monk Radio Network, thank you. As a final thank you, Chipper would like to end with a poem dedicated to yourself, David, Cliff, and all human consciousness.
Thank you, Jules. Systemic overlay indigestion. How do we let to bloom the beauty of this world, growing in fractaled colors, in motion's further curls, blending in separate movements of all us boys and girls into more graceful dancing, hearts alive and more unfurled? There are no more expressions that a fear can bring to bear that haven't been replayed and foisted onto all the care that operates in silence, even when the crying's shared, standing in resolution, heads held strong and in the air. Speaking of this moment that lives as who will take the chances of a lifetime and in consciousness awake, to see what is referred to in the books we write and make as images of living, yet more abstracted and rebaked. Can it really be that hard to hold this focus in the now? where love is felt more solid than force that tries to have it bow in fealty to a lie that lives in dark hollow sacred cows and fed to who will eat that bitter owned unrealizing chow, a spiraling of blue light shading into green, burning effervescently a solidifying dream, strung in urgings of a fixed point on which to hang a star, a lighting of the memory of who we really are. Namaste.
Thank you, David.
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. What a great way to end. It's been a real pleasure, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Namaste.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, David.